Top of the morning. Damn. Top of the morning to ya, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, laddies of all ages. My name is DB333, and welcome back to Hearts vying for the New Order Last Days of Europe as the Republic of Ireland. In the last video, we made it through one focus, and we spent the rest of the time looking at the cool flashy features of the new TNO update, Toolbox theory, which I'm very, very happy is out. I've said that so many times, but I'll say it again. It looks fucking great. Mannerheim, in between getting new cotton swabs for the blood coming out of his ears after I butchered his people's accent, pointed out he does like how Serbia has its cock back. In his own words, they have Banat back, which I think is very fun. It's nice to see. Serbia's already have it very rough. At least they have something new. We got corporatism, just fascism, interim government, despotism with Mikhail. I mean, I'll eventually scroll through all of these, I think, already, but, yeah. Oh, did they already drop an update for the West Russian mod? That's pretty cool. Damn, that's impressive. I'm guessing they've been working with the Toolbox theory devs, if I had to guess. I'm guessing that's the main thing. That is probably, because I know a lot of submods work for each other. And I know Pacifica, I don't think they're going to integrate that submod, but Pacifica really likes it. So I think she would, you know, like, yeah, I'll throw you guys a bone. Let you work with us. So yeah, I'm going to start the timer. I'll make it a little longer. Like this, I'm sorry. So, anyway, we have some new decisions available with Irish investment. We can select a region to begin a project. Specifically, the project can construct one level, require building, and a given stake in region within time limit. Successfully completing the project will increase approval as well as boost GDP, while failing the project will displease investors. The deadline of a project can be pushed back at the cost of available funding and investor approval. Okay, so I think we already have construction, production. What is wrong? Why is... Oh dear. Something's gone horribly wrong. I don't know what, but something's gone wrong. Okay, we're starting a school in Cork. So I can go here and say I'll do a school here. Ooh, okay, and it looks like we can spend money. So we'll select this. If I got this right. Start working on a school. And we'll go ahead and do double efficiency in the region. We'll have no money, but hopefully it'll work, and I'm doing this right. So Cork is in the south. We're building the school there. If I on pause, 19 August. I think that went up a little bit. Although we only have one factory, so I don't know what the fuck's going on there. Okay, this is a little janky. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'll figure it out. If anyone needs some school, it's fucking Cork. Man, I'm playing entire stereotypes and I didn't even realize it. So, we got the choice between the Northern Three or the Archbishop of Dublin. So we have investors. We also have German funding. Subject to much controversy and perhaps greater opportunity, our economy is heavily reliant on deals and funding presented by German corporations. Nationalists may hate the Reich's influence in our nation, but economic cooperation with the Nazi regime has proven to be wildly lucrative for our fledgling economy. There are many ways we might draw more Reichsmarks in our country, and many ways we might spend them. So we have no funding anymore. It's a little unfortunate. Grid power. So we only have 2 production units now. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay. And isn't there a GUI for the Parliament somewhere? Or is that gonna pop up after we get support from these guys? I think the extra political power will be good from the Northern Three, so I'll go ahead and do that. Jack Lynch, Frank Aiken, Brendan Corish. While these men may not always agree, there is no doubt that they are the face of Irish liberalism. All three agree on many social issues that Ireland faces today. A large topic of these 3 men is the status of the Magdalene laundries in Ireland. These so-called asylums have been created by the church to serve as places to restore the honor of fallen women, mostly prostitutes and females with no family. These laundries have been quite the stain on Ireland as the Archbishop of Dublin attempts to cover it up. Let's figure out a way to shut down these establishments to help these women. If we can do this, it will surely help our cause. Once we do this, though, go through this, we shall see reduction in the power that McQuaid has over government. We should help usher in liberals to help us. A liberalized Ireland's a based Ireland. I'll follow the word of the Irishman on that then. Let's go ahead and do the Northern Three. A few blocks away from the Leinster house, Jack Lynch and Frank Aiken sipped on a Fanta at the O'Shaughnessy Cafe. Christ, Jack. This German stuff tastes like shite. Much younger Lynch had a stronger stomach, but couldn't disagree with the old dog opposite to him. The drink of the treaty. Aiken let out a laugh before raising his hand. The waitress had come with the bread. As she put it down on the table, Aiken's eyes widened in indignation. What the fuck is this? The young woman jumped back as Aiken examined the food. Rogenbrot! What does this mean? Look at this crap, I could hit you in the head with this, like it's like a goddamn brick! Lady, can you bring us some more decent bread? The former cabinet minister screamed at her. The waitress tried to explain to him that there was no other type available until Lynch intervened to calm Aiken down. When the girl managed to get away, Aiken didn't stop. Those Jerrys, they're everywhere, Jack! Even in food, why can't they leave us alone? Because the mass won't stand up to them. And anyone who does ends up in a jail cell. You'd think after how many votes for Liberals and got us in the last election, he'd lay off a bit. But since last year, he's jailed 800 more. For fuck's sakes, with man will drive Fianna Fáil up to ruin. Him and his buddy in need. Frank's euphemism for near Blaney got a hearty laugh out of Lynch. I mean, it's incredible, Jack. The mass puts the trade unionists in prison and damn near sick hiles whenever Hitler dumps all the crap into our economy. But those stupid bastards of the Labour Party keep propping up the government. We can't get rid of him either. Not when the Liberals keep saying they'll only support the coalition if he's still there. The world's a mess. And we need to do something about it, Frank. If someone was going to lead Liberalism back to the forefront, it was him. Frank was too old. Perhaps Fianna Fáil was too old a vehicle to do it as well. It's no good. Like my accent, it's no good. We could request more funding. Okay. Well, you picked up the right place, Doherty. This force needs an honest cop like you. You got a choice to stay in Dublin. Had an easy career, but you weren't interested. You're here to fight the good fight. Solve cases, right wrongs. Very villain, but Ulster isn't pretty. There's no sitting on the fence. You have to choose sides. Take a brown paper envelope to look over all the corrupt filth that goes on in Blaney's backyard, or look behind your back every 5 minutes in a fear of a prot or a provost trying to murder you. Inspector Eamon Dory pondered on the words of which the chief superintendent of the Guard of Northern Counties department had left him 2 months earlier with. Truth be told, he'd been transferred to Belfast for the pay raise. His daughter was getting married soon, and paying for weddings wasn't cheap. Perhaps he thought there was an element of careerism to it as well. Yes, success in here would make him friends back in Dublin. There's nothing wrong with that. Whatever his motivations, Doherty had come to the conclusion that they weren't worth it. The counties which Doherty don't want to help unified as a volunteer during the war were a mess. The Northern Irish Constabulary, themselves supposedly part of the Garda, were unreliable as all hell, and each day with a new terrorist attack from some deranged faction or the other. Today was no exception either. Dawn had barely broken when his presence was requested by radio. Another car bombing. This was like Tuesday. Parking this German-made patrol car alongside much of the older models of Northern Irish Constabulary, Dory got out of a Daimler and headed to see the crisp remains of a Morris Oxford, cordoned off by a dozen policemen. Who was it? The instructor glared at the NIC patrolman closest to the vehicle. Oh god, what the fuck is that name? What the fuck? Rorario Brodigan, an IRA big shot. By the scorn in his voice, Dory could tell the man was a Protestant. Where do you want to start? There's a few witnesses to talk to, but you could also take a look at the car registration first. Try searching for something meaningful in the rebel. Let's go check the remains. It's only the funnest part of Ireland. Play through detective shit. Oh yeah, I remember liking detective stuff a lot. So we're gonna check the remains. I'm gonna request some more funding. And then I'll fund some expansion to industry with that. So that should give us a new production unit. Hello? Eamon Dory stepped around the bombed-out hull of the car. It was covered in a black suit. The doors had been blown off. He tried to find anyone that would tell him why it was done. However, all he saw were destroyed seats and a steering wheel stuck in a tree. It was work of terrorists, he could tell, as the bottom of the car was blown up. Across the road, a few officers had been in the process of trying to clean up and decipher the license plate. Car bomb, he muttered to himself as he walked around. Something kept nagging him in the back of his head. He knew the IRA was basically gone, and the Ulsterite groups weren't that bold to bomb a car in broad daylight. However, it was the Ulsterites. It made sense. They didn't even know who the poor sap was. It didn't matter now anyway. They had a job to do. He knew it was going to be hard to find something with evidence. So far, they found a half shoe, with the other half being destroyed. As Eamon did another lap around the car, something caught his eye. On the ground, reflecting off the sun, was a pair of glasses. Eamon stepped in the tracks and put on gloves, picking up the glasses and putting them in a small bag. As he walked back to his car, he noticed witnesses being asked questions by police officers. They'd been assembled a little way down the road. As he got to the car, he gave himself a dilemma. He could either phone the station and try to find a connection to the car using the license plate. It's an older model, but should still check out. Eamon calls for help with the interrogation, however, he could be seen as unwanted due to his presence. Either way, he's going to find out why the bombing occurred. Northerners don't sound like that. Neither does anyone with that accent, man. Doherty. Sestier, good to see you. It has been a long time. How have you been? Well, I'm going to save here because I forget how the investigation is supposed to go. I think I'm supposed to call the station here. So we're going to go ahead and ring the station. James Dillon sat at his desk filing out paperwork. It was always the same for him. Ireland does have his own focus tree. It's had since cutting room floor, I believe. It was always the same for him, being the last one out of Fine Gael headquarters. His desk was surrounded by photos of him and many of the fellow members of the FG. He smiled before remembering the truth of the party, and won an election in 22 years, longer than how some old of their party members had been alive for. He sighed and rubbed his temple. 22 years of playing second fiddle to Fianna Fáil and the rest of Ireland. He looked at his watch. It was 11:30. James packed up his things into the briefcase before shutting off the lights and making his way to the main lobby. To his surprise, Liam Cosgrave and John Costello had pulled up some chairs and had been in the middle of conversation before they saw James and waved him over. The men had been mostly discussing personal things such as their families. The point of the Fianna Fáil had come up, mostly the current issue with liberals. As Liam and Costello talked, James listened. Once the two men had finished, James spoke. Well, to be fair, I agree with both of you. Our time is coming. However, this is not the time to discuss this. Anyway, do you lot want to go to the pub? The two men nodded, and they walked out of headquarters. On the way out, James thought to himself. He was going to retire soon, and Cosgrave seemed to be next in line. He could do much more for Ireland than I, believed James. And off they went. The Reich's last conquest. Has a space race been won? Question mark. Yes, I'd like to be connected to the central police station. Yes, that one, please, said Eamon. How do you say? Doherty. Is that right? Doherty? To the operator on the other side of the line. He was starting to sweat inside the small telephone booth that was located on the street. Unlike the more open ones in Dublin, the ones in Ulster had been much smaller. Product of the past, he thought to himself. He waited for a few moments to be connected. Luckily for him, he had enough change that was given to him from the station to keep the line alive for the next half hour. Eamon, aren't you in the middle of investigation? I am, Luke. Have I found some evidence that could possibly solve the bombing faster? A pair of glasses and license plate number. Been blown half down the street, but thankfully it was one in piece. I want to see if we can find the car in the National Registry. The number's I5I KY 1568. The line was silent for about 10 minutes. He heard papers flip periodically before Luke responded. I got the name of the bloke. An old car, it seems. Belonged to a dead member of the IRA. It said he died 2 years ago. Seemed to be quite the leader. We definitely have information here at headquarters on him if he wants us to drop by. If I think I need it, I will. Thanks, said Eamon as he hung up. He then muttered under his breath. If the IRA was involved, this could seem to be a much larger issue, especially Browniga and the car are connected. Guess it's time to ask some witnesses. So we have... I thought we got more production units. Maybe not. Okay, far away from busy streets of Belfast, more Hillsborough Castle proudly flew the Irish tricolour. Converted into the main administrative office of Northern Counties Ministry, served as the residence of the province's governor, Neil Blaney. Company of the IDF men guarding the approach thought it no surprise that a black Mercedes made its way to the building's guardhouse at noon that Friday, for it always did. Blaney's extra official meetings with other members of cabinet, far away from the massest halls of power in Dublin, were a secret to no one. Charles HoI, for his part, rather hoped their regular encounters would be more secret. Why exactly Lamass kept trusting him as he did, when it was so well known that he'd gone to the zone every weekend, was a mystery to him, one that had settled him more every day. As he got out of the ministerial car, HoI was quick to spot the grey cloud figure outside the building. Lieutenant Colonel Kelly, good afternoon. The IDF man opposite of him gave a courteous remark, but ultimately continued up his way. Kelly knew it can be good. He proceeded to go up the stairs of a Georgian construction until he got to Blaney's office. The Donegal TD, working on his desk, looked about the same as always, albeit his hair seemed to have receded a bit more than HoI remembered. His unmistakable gruff voice called out to Harley shortly after he entered the room. Hello, Charlie. On his desk, a picture of a far younger Lieutenant Blaney in uniform from the war. How are you, Neil? And by the way, what's Kelly doing here? Jim Kelly came back talking about his concerns over our friends. Nothing to worry about, really. Provided you got those signed defense ministry orders, don't you? Holly nodded. By the way, Charles, I'm doing more than fine, as are the counties. Now, what's our boss up in Dublin up to, Charlie? Treason is afoot. I mean, I roughly remember what it's supposed to be, but... yeah. An assassin strikes at Hitler. Joseph McCann, correct? The man sitting across from him simply grunted and turned his head away. Questioning had been difficult at times, with the man simply refusing to answer at times, especially when it came to the occupation and what he was doing when the car bomb went off. Well, he always walked around the same route every day. I turned around, was about to go inside my house before I had the explosion. Next thing I knew, a car had gone up in flames, and poor Bradigan was dead, said McCarran, sounding nervous as a swept brow dropped off his face. Might want to lower inflation. You have a point. I'll do that a little bit. Do you know who this plate belongs to? Eamon picked up the plate from the car below. Immediately, McCarran began to look around, before looking at the plate and shrugging, saying he'd never seen the car before. Eamon thought in his head, time to play the mean cop. Are you sure about that? I assume you know what happens when we find out that you lied to an officer, said Eamon, trying to intimidate McCarran, who looked around one more time before leaning close. Please look behind you. I'm being forced to do this, I beg you. McCarran said this as his eyes darted around the street. Eamon turned around and immediately saw figures watching them. As soon as he met his eyes with one in the front, they broke off and got into a car. Bastards! Yelled Eamon as he barked orders at another officer to continue the questioning as he raced to his car, radioed to headquarters. The stage just got a hell of a lot more interesting, thought Eamon. Now, let's see what those shites are up to. Eamon de Valera looked through his bookcase. He had read all those books before, sometimes even twice or thrice. Many of them had been of a historical nature, ranging from ones written by Plato to more modern books by Thoreau. All of them had ideas that stuck with de Valera. Photos aligned his work desk as well, many of them with his former friend and now rival Sean Lemass. Photos stung de Valera, made him remember things that hurt him. The pain of a friend turning on him, the whole Fianna Fáil following. Their bastard coalition with Labour was all going to ruin Ireland. De Valera then decided to call Sean McGinty to meet him in the office. While McGinty's official abilities had been to serve the Prime Minister, I'm still not going to try to pronounce that until I have a rough idea how to. He didn't interact that much with Lemass, so he was a perfect candidate for De Valera to talk to. It just doesn't make sense, Sean. And Lemass would just turn his back to me. Take the whole party with it. Become a ghost in politics, nothing more than a figurehead for the government. All of the power of a prime minister gone like that. Sean nodded along. I sold the country to the Germans, thinking they would respect our boundaries. They got forced to be policed by them, forced into the so-called Unity Pact. Unity my ass! McGinty tried to comfort De Valera after hearing him rant. I don't think Ireland would forget you, Eamon. Your contributions to Ireland are eternal. Before Sean could continue, he checked for time and had to leave to meet Lemass. Alone, De Valera began to weep silently, hoping he would not be forgotten. He wept as he realized how old he truly was. Aw, poor guy. I say poor guy. I don't know if he was a good guy in real life or not. Sort of a mixed guy, because it's complicated. Ooh. The car weaved through the streets of Belfast, recklessly dodging traffic and swerving around pedestrians with only the barest regard for safety. Eamon followed closely behind in his patrol car, sirens flashing, and taking a little more care to avoid harming any bystanders. He was forced to duck it a couple of times when one of the escaping suspects fired a pistol at his car, but their aim, thankfully, proved to be piss poor. Teshuk. Okay. The chase suddenly ended when the front of the fleeing car wrapped around itself in the light pole. Both escapees staggered out of a wrecked automobile, one bleeding heavily from a cut on his head. Found shelter in the back room of a bookstore. As for Eamon, he knew that it would be suicide to go in there alone, so he waited outside the alley with his service pistol drawn and called for reinforcements. In a matter of minutes, half a dozen guard officers arrived, cordoning off the area and pointing weapons at the door. The shooters were silent to meet the demands by the Garda, over the megaphone, and they made no demands of their own. Just while the officers considered sending someone in, the door flew open and out-barreled one of the shooters, armed and bellowing wildly. He managed to hit one of the officers in the arm before being felled by the hail of bullets. As for the other, it appeared he bled out from his injuries. 2 days later, a file appeared on Eamon's desk, the autopsies of the 2 dead shooters. They had no IDs on them. Prison dentals records proved illuminating. Both men were Catholic and had ties to the IRA, not the UDF. How far does the rabbit hole go? So, we got a successful car bombing investigation. Produce grid power, building consumption, economy. Okay, 3% inflation, I think that's good. Go down a little bit of that, a little bit more towards social spending. Fight poverty, power things up, counter pennies. I think this is fine. I don't really know, but I hope that'll be fine. The NIC is a little bit corrupt, but we have cordial relations. I'll take it. Okay. Suppression efficiency could be a little bit better. Borman's 1, more of the same. It had been a quiet day at O'Flaherty's pub. Sales were low, as always, and there had been very few new faces. Adam O'Flaherty, the owner, made enough to get by, but it was a struggle day in and day out. The church bells of Dublin toiled out all the time. Midnight. Time to close up, Tom. Adam told the one remaining patron still seated at the bar. Go home to your lovely wife and kids. I'm sure they miss you of all the time you spend here. Fine. I'll get out of your hair. I'll tell Sarah you said hi. See you tomorrow. Adam shepherded Tom out into the cold night air. Tom was a decent fellow, all told. Kind-hearted, hard-working, went to church on Sundays. Not too well off, Adam supposed, but that was a lot of Ireland in these days. Things weren't supposed to have been like this. His pa had fought in the war against the English when Adam was just a boy. Always tell stories how great Ireland would be when she reunited with her brothers in the north. That's all the television seemed to talk about, how great having the Isle back together was for everyone. Even the Protestants in the north hadn't seemed to get the memo. Locking up for the night, Adam caught sight of a Volkswagen car puttering down the otherwise quiet street. Now, if that wasn't a damn metaphor for Ireland's ills, Adam thought to himself, damn Germans had swept into Ireland with their fancy promises and offers of assistance, but everyone but the damn Taoiseach knew that they were sucking the lifeblood out of the Irish people. Half the business in Dublin seemed to be German-run these days. People had even had the audacity, the gall, to ask to be stocked, and even the piss for Germans had the audacity to call beer at this pub. Starting dawn, he's going to be Saxon entire playthrough, isn't he? What are you talking about? This is how I talk. Adam sighed as he walked down the street towards his home. He always loved his home, as any true Irishman would, but thought, though he never would admit it, it grew harder and harder every day to feel proud to call himself an Irishman. As if German beer is any better than a good Irish stout. So we're eventually going to finish the focus. We'll have finished 2 focuses. Or we'll finish 2 focuses total in 2 episodes. Let's go. I like it, said Brennan Korsh, where all the members of this party had outlined the proposal for goals of a ruling coalition party. The plan, well, that's hardly surprising. No one suggested anything out of our normal policies. I suppose it's true, said Korsh, crossing his arms and looking across the room at Labour Party's best and brightest. Welfare, minimum wage increases, investment in public services. It's a grab bag of policies we've been pushing for decades. But this time, we're in government. We're in the government coalition, yes. But as much as I hate to remind myself, we're in a minority with Fianna Fáil. Yes. It seems it's not our policy that's in question. It's our branding. I'm afraid we can't talk like the Labour Party if we want to get any of our policies through. So let's talk about unions, more talk about the economic advantages of better paid workers, yes? Got a feeling about the end of a series that accident's going to drive me into joining the UVF. I suppose so. At least while we're talking the rest of the party. Labour MP went their separate ways a short time later. Equally parts optimistic and inflated about the part they had to play in the government. Labour Party was in good hands, if they don't waste it. Audrey McCormick dreaded her walk home at the grocery every day. Not for the distance, it wasn't too far really, nor did she dread it because of the scenery. See, Dublin were actually quite nice. No, the reason she hated her walk home was because of a certain construction yard she passed by every day on her right. The men working on the yard, where Audrey would sooner call them pigs, had grown infatuated with her, and would often loiter around the entrance to the yard in drunken stupor, trying to woo her with her supposed manly charm. Standing up for herself had only intensified their efforts, and no one had been willing to help her, no matter who she complained to. Boys will be boys, had always been the answer. But jeers and calls began immediately. She ducked her head in shame, resigned to this unfortunate fact of life, when she heard a shrill whistle. A policeman walked towards the group, shouting, "Don't you layabouts have something better to do than harass passerbys? You're being paid to work for yard, do your jobs, and leave a lady alone." Audrey found herself shocked. Nobody ever stood up for her before, let alone the police. The men went back to the yard, grumbling all the while. A policeman strode over to her, shaking his head. "I can't believe it. In broad daylight." "Don't you worry, miss. We'll be patrolling here more often. They won't bother you again." Audrey doubted she would never be catcalled again, but she nodded her head in thanks all the same. One group of pigs being called out for what they were wouldn't stop the next group, nor would it keep the men from acting out when the cops weren't around. Though it didn't stop the smile that started working right across her face. Things wouldn't change overnight, but everything, she supposed, had to start somewhere. Intolerance would no longer be tolerated. Next, still one party. For decades, our Taoiseach de Valera and now the incumbent Lamass have kept the Republic of Ireland running relatively smoothly under the leadership of the Fianna Fáil. Sure, there have been hiccups requiring us to make deals with Irish Labour that we really rather would not have made, but as well as through some shady practices, but Fianna Fáil still governs. Sure, the political opposition may call us a corrupt cesspool of political violence, but they fail to understand the nuance of the position we find ourselves in. Ireland sits on a knife's edge, balanced between political pressures from Germany, growing Irish nationalism, and calls for complete political independence, and tensions from rogue paramilitaries and terrorist organizations in Ulster. Only Fianna Fáil has been able to keep Ireland from falling apart at the seams, and only Fianna Fáil will continue to be able to do so. That's why we must continue our governance at all cost. And I'll leave that off for the YouTube people, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.